Welcome to the Write Better Fiction podcast, the show that helps you, well, write better fiction. I'm Shane Miller, urban fantasy author, writing coach, and story geek, and each week I'll be talking to industry experts about the writing craft, publishing, and the business of being an author. Enjoy the show. Hello, Fictioneers, and welcome to episode 6 of the Write Better Fiction podcast. Today, I'm chatting to fellow urban fantasy author, podcaster, and author coach Holly Lyne, all about goal setting for writers. You'll pick up a ton of tips on how to set realistic goals you can actually achieve. So stay tuned for that. But first, it's time for Question of the Week. No replies to last week's question as yet, but if any do come in, I will read them on a later episode. I did get a couple more responses to the author mindset question with Dan Wilcox, though. Judith Mortimer said procrastination is the mindset issue that she struggles with the most, which I think we all struggle with that one at one time or another. And Herman Sternagel said imposter syndrome and focus. And I've definitely had my fair share of battles with imposter syndrome. It's not fun, so I feel that one too. This week's question is, what is your biggest author goal? Okay, it's time for my update from the writing chair. This week, I've been working on making sure my income and expenses have all tracked properly because it's that sexy time of the year. It's tax time. And I like to make sure I get all my tax things sorted as early as possible. Sorry the update wasn't more exciting, but taxes are a necessary evil. If you want early access to episodes and exclusive access to the Fictioneer community on Discord, where you can participate in things like Question of the Week and weekly accountability, you can support the Write Better Fiction podcast on Patreon for as little as $5 a month. Support the show at patreon.com/writebetterfiction. When I reach 50 patrons, I'm going to start recording live Q&A sessions to answer your writerly questions. Okay, that's about it from me, so let's get into the interview with Holly. Hello and welcome to the Write Better Fiction podcast. Today I'm joined by Holly Lyne. Holly Lyne lives in Yorkshire with her husbeast, 2 children and midwife Kat. When not juggling family commitments, she writes dark urban fantasy or dark contemporary fantasy novels as H.B. Lyne, purging her imagination of its demons. Inspired by the king of horror himself, Holly aspires to be at least half as prolific and successful and promises to limit herself to only 1 tome of the Stan-like proportions in her career. Holly is also the author of Goal Setting for Writers and an author coach. She's a bullet journal enthusiast, a podcaster, and has a knack for getting shit done. Hi, Holly. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
You're so welcome. So let's launch right in. And if you could tell us a bit about you and your writing journey.
Sure. So I'm the total cliche. I've always written stories ever since I could hold a pen. I role played and read voraciously as a teenager, and just always had a thing for storytelling. And I started writing Harry Potter fan fiction in my 20s, and readers online. Yeah. It took me a while to be okay about admitting that, but I'm there now. Yeah. But yeah, readers online, like reviewers, were like, oh, this is so good, you should write something original. And so I did. And and I published my first novel late in 2013 and never looked back, really. So now, like a decade later, which I can't quite believe, I've published 10 books. I've been in anthologies. I co-hosted the Great Writers Share podcast, and I co-host the Unstoppable Authors podcast. And now I'm an author coach too. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
That is awesome. So like I said, we're here to talk about goal setting for writers. So in the book, you start by asking people to consider where they are right now before setting any goals. So why is it important to look at where you are now before you plan for the future? And just to get this out of the way, we're both number 1 futuristic. So I'm very interested in the answer to this question.
Yeah, I did wonder if you were going to mention that. So it's a bit like planning a journey. You need to know where you're starting from so that you can figure out how to get where you're going. And for goals to be achievable, they have to be realistic. So nothing against aspiration. I am very aspirational. It's great. But aspirations tend to be much more long-term, and you still have to take each logical step to get there. So you do need to do like a stock take and see what's going on in your life, how much time and energy you have to give to a new project or a goal. So if you've never finished a book before and this is your first book, it might be naive to set a goal of writing 10 books in a year.
Is it?
I mean, not for you, obviously, weirdo. But for most people.
Yes.
But yeah, so I think knowing where you are helps inform what's achievable for your circumstances.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess you'd have to also take stock of, you said circumstances there, so take stock of your life situation and whether you can actually do the goal that you're trying to set yourself, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. You also talk about something called crisis mode, which when I read the book really resonated with me. So can you tell everyone what crisis mode is and give some tips on how you might deal with that?
Yeah, so crisis mode is when something significant happens to upend your normal life. So like in fiction, that would be the inciting incident, right? Or the grenade. It's
very good.
It's the thing that changes everything. And these sorts of things happen to us in real life. So it might be a bereavement or a divorce or a trauma, a serious illness, suddenly becoming a carer to somebody. There's a whole load of things. And I'd classify like something like moving a long distance in there as well. It doesn't have to be a really bad thing, but any huge disruptive force. When we're in the thick of that, we're in crisis mode, and all we can do is try to survive. So we can only do the things we absolutely have to do. So for most of us, writing just won't be possible. I like to sort of frame this in terms of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So in crisis mode, you might be struggling to meet your most basic physiological and safety needs at the bottom of the pyramid, and meeting anything higher up is just impossible. So we've got to meet those basic needs before we can think about our emotional needs and the things we want, that add to our lives. But I think a lot of us feel as though we should be able to write no matter what.
Yeah.
And that simply isn't the case. So it's important to let yourself off the hook if life has thrown one of those curveballs at you. You need to attend to your, essential needs and possibly those of dependence as well. So if you have to take a writing break for a while, let yourself do that. Yeah, I mean, some of us really need to keep writing while we're in crisis mode for our own sanity. It can be grounding, or it can be escapism. If you're going through a horrible breakup, for instance, it might be that you need the catharsis of writing. But if that's the case, use it for that. Don't try and put like career pressure or anything on it. Let it be what it is.
Yeah, and I mean that's a really important thing too. You mentioned career pressure there. And I haven't actually asked you a question. I didn't send you any questions about this in advance. But talking about career pressure, there are a lot of loud voices in the indie community that talk about lots of different things, but particularly the need to be a full-time writer. So I was wondering if you could speak to that and what your opinion is of that.
I can use 4-letter words, right?
Yeah, you can say whatever you fucking want. Go for it.
Yeah, it's bullshit. Not all of us can or want to be full-time, and when we're in crisis mode, it is almost certainly going to be impossible to be full-time. And yeah, don't listen to any of the shoulds. Yeah, you have to learn how to tune out those voices. Some of us just need to create just for fun and just for the joy of it, and not turn it into a full-time career. Doing that is quite risky, and I speak from personal experience.
Yes.
It's really easy. It's really easy to think, oh, I love this. I could do this full time. Wouldn't that be amazing? And then my life would be amazing. And then you try and take it full time, and suddenly the pressure to make money from it, to earn a living and to be dependent on that income absolutely kills the creativity and ruins the whole thing for you. So it's not for everyone.
No, it isn't. And that's really key. Like I've talked about this on the show before, but I left a day job recently and I've got some freelance stuff, and then I write. And I did get to the stage where the fun had gone. Like I wasn't having fun writing anymore because it felt like something I had to do. Whereas when I was in my day job and utterly miserable, it felt like an escape, like you were saying earlier. So if you are going to go full time, I think you would agree with me that you need to find a way to recapture the fun. Otherwise, what's the point?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, so which kind of brings us on to something I was talking to about to our mutual friend Dan Wilcox on the show last week, and we were talking about finding your big why. And I know you're a huge fan of this. So what do you mean by finding your why, and how exactly do you go about finding it?
So for me, a big why is the deeply rooted motivation. It's like the core of the onion. So it can take a bit of peeling away of the layers to find it. But I think it's really helpful to know, because surface motivations often won't be strong enough. They won't get you through that, those challenges, the really difficult times, it's that deep driving force that helps us push through those big challenges. So, for instance, a surface motivation might be an income goal or needing to finish a book by a certain deadline. But the big why is going to be something like, and these are just examples, I need to create a freedom lifestyle for myself and my family. Or I have to share my writing in order to move people emotionally and change their lives. It doesn't have to be profound, but it needs to be the thing that you can only get to by being that tenacious toddler and saying, yeah, but why? Yeah, but why? Yeah, but why? So yeah, you had to just listen to your own instincts and keep asking yourself why on earth you're putting yourself through the drama of writing a damn book.
Yeah, there are easier ways to make money. I feel like I say that a lot on this show, but there really are. Okay, cool. So, and again, not a question I'd prepped you for, but I know you, me, and a couple other people we know, we're also a big fan of setting a word for the year. So what is your rationale behind setting a word for the year, and why is it so effective if you're looking for focus?
Yeah, it can help you eliminate, it helps decision making easier because it eliminates options. If you have one thing that you are working on that is your focus, and it should be something fairly broad so that it can encompass a number of things, but like mine this year is passion, so it helps me to just decide, like, no, I'm not going to do that because I don't care enough. I'm just focusing on the stuff I'm really passionate about. And it's hard enough. We've got too many decisions to make as it is.
Yeah.
So yeah, having that way to whittle down to the essential things is important, I think.
Yeah, it's really good. I remember when you first told me about that and helped me find my word, it was like a light bulb went, oh, I don't have to do all that stuff. Great.
And it's been really effective for you, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has actually. I would highly recommend everybody picking a word for themselves. Yeah, it's awesome. And then kind of going off of that, but still on goal setting, obviously, you love a SMART goal. You talk about SMART goals relentlessly, if I may say so. So can you tell everyone a bit about what SMART goals are and how you can apply them to writing specifically?
Yeah, sure. So SMART is an acronym, and it stands for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. And I mean, I hope they all, are self-explanatory. But these are like the essential components of a goal that make it much more likely that you'll succeed. Really vague goals tend not to be met. That's why survey after survey shows that millions of people dream of writing a book, but only a tiny proportion of them actually do it, because when your goal is just write a book, it's not specific enough.
But when?
So yeah, and like a New Year's resolution of lose weight or get my life together is always going to fail, because what on earth does that even mean?
Yes.
So yeah, get specific, like really specific, and have something that you can track. The measurable part is, you know, so it might be a word count or an income or a number of books or a number of hours spent writing, whatever it is, something measurable that you can track. And doing that stock take, that's where the achievable comes in. If you've looked at what your life looks like, you can set a goal that is realistic for you, that you're actually going to be able to do within that time frame, because you have to put a deadline on it as well. And then the relevant comes back to your big why. So you need to work your big why out to know what's going to be relevant. So yeah, it's all about having that tangibility and something really solid to work towards. So for a writer, a SMART goal could work around word count or sales figure or finishing a certain number of books. There are loads and loads of ways to apply the method. It's limitless. But for example, a newer writer with a day job and a family, having done that stock take, who has a big why of wanting to finish their first novel for the fun and challenge of it, they might set a SMART goal like write for 1 hour, 4 days a week for 6 months. And that ticks all of the SMART boxes, and it's, you know, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. And a writer who's further along in their career would have probably a very different SMART goal. Say they're the main breadwinner for their family. They might have something like make 6 figures this tax year from publishing 6 commercial fiction novels. So it's really specific and it's measurable and all of the things, but it's obviously very different from a newer writer's goal. I wouldn't recommend a brand new writer set that goal.
No, probably not the best idea. No. I did that and I nearly killed myself trying to leave my day job, but it's fine. I'm not there anymore. So you said something at the top of the show which was interesting. You said you don't mind people being aspirational, you're aspirational yourself. And that brings me to, should we place any limits on our goals? And do you think a goal is either too big? Why or why not?
I hate this question.
I know you do.
It feels like a trap.
It's not. I'm just interested in your answer.
Okay, my answer, I'm really sorry, but it depends.
Okay.
Okay, so brace yourself.
Yes.
Some people, not you and I, other people are not very future orientated.
What?
I know, right? It hurts to contemplate that, but it's true. So for some people, short-term small goals are the best option. Setting like a 10-year multi-million-dollar income goal is probably the wrong goal for them.
Probably.
And it may well be the wrong goal for someone like us with number one futuristic as well. If money is not the big why, yeah, it's the wrong goal. So yeah, we do that stock take and we set relevant, achievable goals because they're more likely to succeed. And you can definitely, like within that framework, you can definitely have goals that are, you know, too big because they wouldn't be relevant or achievable. But and it depends. Some of us are actively driven by big aspirations. So if you really want a private jet someday, or you know something that other people would think, what, that's crazy. Yeah. If that motivates you, then use it. It's just going to be hard to work into a SMART goal, but having it kind of on the periphery is fantastic. So, you know, I have a pretty big aspirational goal that I hold quite loosely. I won't feel like a failure if I never reach it, certainly. But it's not really about money. I use the private jet just because it's so extravagant. But you know, if my big dreamy goal did come true, money would be an inevitable side effect of it. But it's not the goal. The goal is I really want to have like a massive community of like super fans who love my books and they get tattoos related to them.
Oh, I love
And
that.
and they cosplay as my characters at conventions, and I get invited to conventions and have a great big long line of people waiting to meet me. And I want someone to make video games and board games of my books, and I want a TV deal. I want all of that. That's my big bucket list. That's my big dream. That would be amazing. And that is extremely aspirational.
Yes.
So yeah, some people might think that that kind of aspiration is crazy or too big, but I get loads of energy from daydreaming about stuff like that. So if you're like that, it's a good idea to have those really big goals. But if you're not like that, then that would be too big. That would be not the best thing for you.
Yeah, definitely. And this is going off topic, but one of my big goals is also to have like a Netflix deal or a movie deal. I think, you know, most writers think about that at some point, I guess. So who would you cast to play the main character in your Shifters of Curtain series?
Oh, see, I can't answer that because it's changed. It's been so long since I wrote it. I did like mentally cast it back when I was writing that series.
Yeah.
But all the actors are too old now.
You'd have to readjust.
I have to, yeah, like I really, really wanted Liam Neeson for Fortune.
Oh, definitely too old now.
Right. Yeah, he's way too old now.
I'm not, that's no shade on Liam Neeson. I've read Holly's books.
I'm kind of thinking now, actually, for Fortune, Bradley Cooper would be awesome.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, but he's not the main character. I can't like the main character in that series is like a 19-year-old girl. I'm not that familiar with 19-year-old actresses. I don't know who's around, who's good. I don't know.
Who knows?
Yeah,
that's funny that you wrote it so long ago. You'd now have to recast. That's hilarious.
But I do know who I would want to do the music.
Yes, I know you know.
Yeah, I love Bear McCreary. I think he is amazing, and I would want him to do the music.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Wicked. Talking of things that futuristic people might find uncomfortable. When we set, or at least when I set a goal, I can't speak for how your futuristic works, but almost my futuristic takes over, and then I set that SMART goal and I'm locked in. Like, so the thought of pivoting from that goal really doesn't sit well with the way my futuristic manifests. Mm-hmm. Can you talk about why people should be comfortable with pivoting if they need to? This is more for me than the listeners, to be honest.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I'm so glad you asked this because I'm like the queen of pivoting.
Are you?
Really? Yeah. So we have our number ones in common, but my number two, Clifton Strength, is strategic, which gives me pivoting superpowers. But not everyone has that, and it's not that easy for everyone. You do not know. So I mean, to a certain extent, everyone needs to find a way to be okay with pivoting. But actually, a lot of the time, if it's not in your natural skill set, it may not be a problem for you. It may be easier for you to avoid situations that result in a pivot becoming necessary. If you're really single-minded and have that drive to just keep going no matter what, that's a good thing. So celebrate that about yourself. But sometimes we do just have to pivot. Something gets in the way, some sort of, it might be crisis mode, might not be quite as extreme, but something might make a pivot necessary. And this is not my example, this is one I've picked up from someone else, but it's such a good analogy. It's a cancelled flight in an airport scenario. if you're in that kind of situation, if you're the kind of person who will panic and freak out and be like, shit, I had a plan and now the plan is out the window and it's completely beyond my control.
Yep.
You have to be okay with why are you laughing?
If any of those people are listening.
Yeah, you have to be okay with like taking a minute. Like, it's usually like 99 times out of 100 it's going to be fine if you take, you know, a week, even a month to just kind of go, right, okay, let's just release that, take some time to do some processing, journal on it, maybe grieve for the lost future that is now not going to happen, and then start to make a new plan. And yeah, so be okay with taking some time. But if you're someone who finds that pivoting happens quite often, whether you want it to or not,
if you happen to be one of those people, yeah,
you just happen to be me, be okay with that too, and factor in your personality and what you know you're like. So like I set really long deadlines on things, and if I set a deadline at all, like I do put time bound things on my goals, but I tend not to give myself deadlines to finish books. So my time bound aspect of each SMART goal tends to be more like, you know, write for a certain amount of time each day for a certain amount of time, that kind of goal. So yeah, be okay with pivoting, be okay with not pivoting, and be okay with taking some time to figure out how you're going to pivot, and just accept yourself, which I know is way easier said than done. Way easier. If you need help with it, get a coach.
Yes. I'm just glad you said be okay with not pivoting. My life is fixed now. Thank you.
Yeah, there you go.
So, speaking of coaches, you do coach around goal setting, and I have to say I attended your kind of January goal setting event. It was fantastic. If a client came to you though and told you that they didn't really know what success looked like, and obviously success can look like many different things to many different people, how would you suggest that they go about finding their own path or route to success?
Yeah, so like you said, I mean, success is just so subjective. So first of all, I reassured them that they don't have to adhere to someone else's idea of success, because I think that can be really easy. We can get swept up, and like we were saying earlier about the sort of I guess push to get as many people to be full-time as possible. You need to be okay with tuning that out and coming up with your own definition of success. So that really does come back to that big why. So you need to do that work first. Think about, you know, what it is you really, really want. And success then, by definition, is achieving that. So take some time to think about what life would look like if the big why was met. So journal on it. I'm a big fan of journaling. Writing about writing. Daydream. Talk to someone, talk to a friend or a coach about it. And just, yeah, peel back those onion layers and try and get to what feels right for you. And it's totally an intuitive thing. It's not something you're gonna find in a book written by someone else. It's no one can tell you what your success is going to be, so you just have to do the inner work. And yeah, not everyone is motivated by money or sales, you know, and there's nothing wrong with that if you are. I am, but you know, I'd still keep writing even if I never made another penny from it.
Yeah.
You know, I possibly wouldn't bother to publish, but I'd write.
Yeah.
You know, so but for me, success, that, you know, I can write without being successful in the way I define it, And success for me does include financial rewards, but everyone has to find their own vision of success. Maybe it's just finishing that first novel. Maybe that's what success looks like, regardless of what you then do with it afterwards. Or maybe it's like spending your retirement writing and sharing stories with readers, just giving your books away. Maybe that's success. Maybe success is having somebody else come up and tell you they loved your book, and it's the only way to figure out what success looks like for you is to really sit with the idea and think about it and figure out that big why, and the rest will follow.
Yeah, and I think that's a really key message for people listening. If you are bombarded every day like we all are with these loud voices saying you must earn this much, or you must write this many books, or you must rapid release even, you don't have to. And your goal could be, I just want to write one book just to say I've done it, I'll publish it, that's it. I'm not really interested in being a working writer, and you don't have to be.
Yeah, and actually I had a conversation with my other half about this. I think it was today. He's writing his first book, and he said that if he ever finishes it, he will consider himself, an author because he's written a book, but he would not be a writer. Like being a writer is not who he is. He's not defined by it, and he probably wouldn't write another one. He just wants to write this one. Yeah. And if that's your aspiration, there is nothing wrong with that. That's wonderful.
Yeah, just more books in the world in general, even if it's only one. That's great. So I'm going to put you on the spot because I'm a bit of a dick, as you know. What is your big goal for this year, and why did you choose that goal in particular, Holly?
I think you already know the answer to this. If you don't, obviously.
Yeah, but the listeners don't, Holly. People want to know.
So I don't have one. I know, right?
Talk us through that.
Yeah. So I always really encourage people to have an annual goal, a big goal for the year. I don't have one. It's do as I say, not as I do. No, I have some smaller goals, and I'm really just taking one quarter at a time right now. So yeah, I've been very open about my burnout in 2021. People who are already aware of me, have listened to Unstoppable Authors or followed me on Instagram or whatever, will know all about this. But I had a terrible burnout in 2021, and it took a long time and a lot of coaching to recover from it. And it totally stalled my number one futuristic. And I could not plan. I just couldn't see. I couldn't see more than a week ahead, really. And my own coach helped me through that recovery process by encouraging me to only plan one quarter at a time when I was ready, because for a long time I wasn't even ready to do that. And that is still what's working best for me. So my very much not a SMART goal, very loosely held idea of what I might like to accomplish this year is possibly, maybe, potentially finish 2 fiction books and my next non-fiction book. But yeah, life is complicated. So I'm just taking it one quarter at a time, and we'll see how the year plays out once it's over. But yeah, each month and each quarter, I am setting SMART goals, just to be clear.
I know. They're just smaller, right?
Yeah.
And that's really key as well, I think. Goal setting is often held up as this, like, you have to have these big, what's that phrase, like big, hairy, audacious goals, wherever that came from, I can't remember now. And that's the type of goal people think of when they think goal setting. It has to be grand. It has to be something that's going to change my life tomorrow. It has to be all these things. So what would you say to people who are in a difficult situation, who are thinking, I need to set a goal, but I just can't face like those huge goals. I can't even think about that right now.
Yeah, if you're not motivated by long-term goals, don't try to set them. And yeah, if life is too difficult, if you're in crisis or survival mode, excuse me, don't even try. It's perfectly okay just to set a small goal, or a series of them, and to focus on your own actions rather than outcomes. So some of us are perfectly able to set, say, an income goal or a sales goal and do whatever it takes to make that happen. Some of us are not wired that way, and we need to focus on a goal that is just about things we can control. Because to a certain extent, how much money you make or how many sales you make is not really within your control. So, it might be better to set a goal like writing for a certain amount of time each day, or just finishing one book, something that's relatively modest. Although I appreciate that for some people, finishing a book is actually a very big goal. But if you've done it before, then it's not such a crazy idea.
Yeah, so modest for you, whatever your
Yes.
situation is at the moment. Perfect. Okay, so this is the Write Better Fiction podcast, and this is my favorite question I ask all my guests. Holly Lyne, why do you write fiction?
It was really hard not to share this earlier. When I was talking about big whys, but yeah, mine is, and I'm only half joking, I have to write to quiet the demons in my head. It's catharsis for me. It's a way to process my own feelings and ideas, and it's a deeply rooted push to turn the half-formed stories in my head into something coherent, get them out so they don't drive me crazy. And the other thing is, I really want to make people cry.
Yeah, I get that.
I want to move people.
Yeah.
Happy tears, sad tears, both at the same time. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, both at the same time. That's good. I challenge you to do that. Oh, I like that. And the demons in the head thing, I do wonder if that's common with people who tend to the darker themes, like if we're writing, darker urban fantasy or horror, for example. Because I often find that horror authors and people who write darker stuff are some of the nicest people and like sunniest people. Yeah. But that's probably because we've expressed so much onto the page.
Yeah, we're not holding it inside ourselves, we've released it.
Yeah. So to our good friend Julia Scott, who's also been on the show, do kill someone in your books. It's perfectly fine.
It's good for you.
Killing people is good for you. No, that's not. Let's not
in fiction. Yes,
on the page, of course. Yeah. Awesome. Well, can you tell everyone a bit more about where they can find you and everything you do online?
Yep, sure. Everything fiction is at hblyne.com, and Lyne is spelled Lyne. My coaching is all at patreon.com/HollyLyne, and I'm at hblyne on Instagram. And you can also check out the Unstoppable Authors podcast on all platforms.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on the show, Holly. That was great.
You are very welcome. Thank you for having me.
I hope you enjoyed the interview with Holly and picked up a ton of actionable tips on how to set your writing goals. Join me next week when I'll be chatting to the author of one of my favorite craft books of all time, Chris Spisak, all about self-editing your novel. Have a great writing week. Thanks for listening to the Write Better Fiction podcast. Remember to hit subscribe on your favorite podcatcher and leave a review, and we'll chat again next time.